Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tea Party is Dead podcast. Once again, I am your host, Jim, and we have a very special guest tonight. He is Brother John F. We're not even going to wait until after the end of the interview to talk about his website. You could go to brotherjohnf.com and his YouTube channel, which if you haven't been there yet, you really need to take a look at it. Brother John F., how are you doing today?
Great, Jim. It's wonderful to be with you.
Awesome. Well, we have a lot to talk about today, so let's just dive right into it. You mentioned in the past that you believe the price of silver will inevitably be at a higher level than gold. Can you spend a little bit of time explaining why you think this is?
Sure, it's very complex as far as, well, let's start off with the definition of money. So, if you do your traditional lookup of money and its definition and its characteristics, it has a lot of characteristics that it has to have. Of course, gold traditionally is money for a lot of reasons, and I don't have the list in front of me, but it has to do with the divisibility, fungibility, medium of exchange, store of value, etc. So when we're talking about gold and silver being money at this time, obviously you're not going to walk down to the dollar store and give them an ounce of gold. You're going to end up on YouTube with some crazy video or something. But 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 as far as being a store of value, that aspect of being money, that is the role that gold plays right now. As far as, well, we think we know, we really don't know what the central banks hold, because I've, as I pointed out last night with the Manarino interview, that with Raul, that we don't really know who holds what, and a lot of them are saying it's kind of like a game of liar's poker. We'll have to see when the cards are turned on the table who holds what. But this store of value concept, that has to do with the people deciding, and in the case of gold, it's the central banks deciding, of course, because the countries don't trust each other. But as far as the people, their money has always been silver. And my proposition that I always try to promote is the idea that the people's money is silver, and that's as far as being a store of value. So what I'm saying is that if silver reemerges as money in that aspect, then that combined with the industrial use, which is rapidly using up silver, because as I pointed out in my videos, silver is the top three as far as electrical conductivity, thermal conductivity, and reflectivity. Well, it's the tie with aluminum in different ways, but it's top three. Then there's that biocide issue that's fourth. But so silver has that huge industrial application. I think 10,000 uses was the last one I saw, and obviously the highest number of patents for any element. So there's that huge industrial use for silver, and that goes into the reason why they demonetized, of course. But then if we look at it being remonetized, and again, if we look at Anatol Fiketty, pardon me for pronouncing that wrong, his concept that he promotes is that money is determined by people. Whatever, and this is kind of a twist on Gresham's law, whatever people decide to use as a store of value, that is the store of value. So if people decide to start stacking silver, then that becomes money in the sense that that's what people are using. So we have central banks using gold as a store of value, and what I'm proposing is that people are beginning to use silver as a store of value. And so ultimately, if that occurs, and we have this demand from industry and the demand from investors as a store of value, that sets up a potentially explosive situation for silver, which could actually rocket it higher than gold at some point.
I think I saw on your blog earlier today that there was this huge graphic that was posted, and it was done by the people that created the Silver Bomb book. It is very educational, and it explains a little bit of that. All right, so it looks clear to me, if you were watching the price market last week regarding silver, that The manipulators are trying their hardest to keep silver below 35. It's almost comical now. As soon as it would go up to 35, if I was a betting man, I would bet when they would smack it down again. I almost get the feeling that this could possibly be one, if not the last battle between us, the physical holders, and the paper holders of silver. Is this something that you would agree with?
Well, there's a lot of rumors about, and there's a lot of people that have inside information. There's people like Jim Willey. There's people like James Sinclair. There's a lot of people about. Eric King talks to a lot of the people that have sources. I don't have any sources. I'm just like you. I'm just a guy out there looking at what's out there, and I have to conclude what I have to conclude. So as far as the rumors go, I don't know whether those rumors are true, but they're definitely rumors that J.P. Morgan's book can be broken at that $35 an ounce level. Now, we know we hit nearly $50 before the May smackdown, but how leveraged is J.P. Morgan? Is J.P. Morgan the only silver short? What is the Chinese involvement? I really don't know the answer to those questions, but I know that it's all a paper game, as Bix Weir has pointed out. This is paper traded by computers, and what is going to cause J.P. Morgan to be flipped to the other side, I don't know. But the most recent Ted Butler and others have concluded that they're ramping up those paper shorts again, and Clive Bond is expecting a smackdown based on the commitment of traders. All that stuff, I really don't know. I just watch the price, and of course, I try to pick out points for the stackers because I'm really trying to address the silver stackers. I'm not really interested in – now I do cover options and things before the September smackdown occurred based on following Clive Mond's recommendation. I picked out an AGQ put, and we did get a tremendous collapse. I've recently covered that, and I did pick out a put that I thought would be probably – the closest short-term one. And again, that's for the paper players. That's for people, and we may address that issue later. But I really don't know if that $35 price target is key, because only the silver shorts and the people who are betting against physical silver by using paper silver, only they really know where they're going to bust and have to turn around and go long.
You know, whenever I think about the J.P. Morgan, and whenever it eventually crashes, I picture some new intern that just started work on the floor, and there's some exec like Jeffrey Skilling from Enron that's going to take the intern into the room and say, do you see this screen? Anytime it goes above 35, hit this button. And the intern will keep on doing it until till the cops come up and he realizes what he did. And that might seem like a very simplistic thought, but whenever you look at what happened with Lehman Brothers and Enron, it usually ends up with something like that. All right, well, real quick, I wanted to ask you about the CNN blog post that was out a few days ago. I guess they had to ask the investor, and there was a question that somebody asked the CNN Money's help desk, and they said, how do you buy physical silver? And they replied by saying, you buy physical silver by buying the ETFs, the SLV and the SIVR. I was just curious what your thoughts are whenever you would hear something like that.
Yeah, that's the first time I've really heard that, and I'll have to investigate that story. That's really fantastic. I think other people have made analogies about that. That's like I need to buy a new car, so we'll have the guy across town buy a car, and he can drive back and forth to work in my car. It doesn't make any sense. If you want to buy physical silver, you need to buy physical silver and take delivery. But again, that's the big game of the ETFs, and I've already covered in many videos in the past. We have all the dirty hands involved with the SLV. We have J.P. Morgan. We have BlackRock. We have not Barron's, but the bank in England with the recent, it's just escaped me, Barclays. All these guys had their hands in the pot with this SLV. And of course, It's my contention that it's a paper vehicle intended to divert true investment interest away from real silver. And it's a double whammy because not only are these people not buying physical silver, but they are potentially actually contributing to the short effort against physical silver. So they're giving their money to the shorters. And it doesn't surprise me at all to see the corporate media jump on that bandwagon and continue the diversion.
Okay, so at the beginning of spring, I've been, I guess, pretty suspicious at the gold bars that have been going around just because of the price. And I think somewhere around a month or two ago, we saw our first story in New York how there was a dealer that drilled into a 10-ounce gold bar and he found tungsten. I'm also speculating that in the future we will find central banks that will drill into their own bars and they will find tungsten or who knows what, and they'll discover that these bars came from other countries, which I really don't want to say the U.S., but maybe Russia, China, who knows? Is this something that you think as a possibility? And if you do, what would the ramifications be if something like that were to happen?
Well, there's a ton of rumors swirling about that. Now, you have to keep in mind, I think I would probably quote, as I quoted in last night's video from Market Wizards. Of course, that's, in my opinion, the second greatest market book ever written of all time. Interview with Top Traders by Jack Schwager. But the interview with Ed Seykota, where he talks about the fact that gold is something that basically tends to be dug out of the ground, carried to a place, buried in the ground, and then maybe another 40, 50, or 60 years, it's dug back up, carried to another place, and buried again. So what does that mean? Well, it again gets back to the major point about how we're still on an international gold standard, even though we're on this type of petrodollar standard. But the countries don't really trust each other. And we saw that with Venezuela, of course. They had to, I don't remember if they flew the gold back or boated it back or how they got the gold back there. And this is all, I don't really know if it's true or not. But for the longest time, there's the explanation of the cages. I don't know if it was under World Trade Center or some other Federal Reserve building. They'd wheel these carts back and forth between these cages, and everybody trusted the U.S. to hold their gold and wheel it back and forth in the cages. But that was the traditional 400-ounce bar gold, and that was the traditional bars. And you can go and look at the bar lists. As I point out in other videos, there's very suspicious numbers coming out of the SLV bar list. There's also gold bar lists. But the latest rumor, and that would be Jim Willey and others, have talked about the fact that the Chinese are in the process of remelting the bars and putting them in kilo-based bars as opposed to the ounce-based bars. Now, that has all kinds of ramifications about the potential tungsten bars. It also has ramifications about a transition from the traditional, I don't even know what it is, English, Babylonian, whatever it is, type of weight system over to a new metric system. So there's so many rumors swirling about that. I can't even say where the truth lies, but I will say this, that with the price of silver where it is right now, it's most likely that if you buy a 1-ounce coin from one of the known mints and from other reputable dealers, it's highly unlikely that you're going to be seeing a counterfeit with silver. With gold, who knows?
Right. All right. Well, moving along to a different subject. In your videos, which once again I want to highly recommend everybody listening to this podcast check out, you've talked about companies such as Priceline, Groupon, LinkedIn being pumped and dumped. You even mentioned Apple could very well crash soon. Could you spend a little bit of time summarizing exactly what either the banksters or whoever these profiteers are doing?
Sure. Well, the concept is really pretty simple. It's really kind of a moral concept, and it has to do with the breakdown and decay of I'm not going to say capitalist system because, of course, that's not what we have. We have some kind of crony system. Whatever terms you want to use to describe it, it's a crony system. But the way the system works is that when morals decay, and I'm not going to go into a religious rant, but when the moral structure of a country or of a nation or of a region or of the world decay to the point that people really don't believe in honesty anymore, then it becomes every man for himself. And we see this in government. It's how much can I loot out and get out? And that's what you have in these companies. So what you have with the stock options is that these people that form these companies, or these people that are appointed to these companies, or these people that run these companies and start them in venture capital, what they do is at the beginning, before they issue their IPOs, they take a section of the stock, and you have the public float, and then you have another section of the shares that aren't public float. Those are to be issued to insiders. What they do is they issue options on that stock, and generally the price is zero. So ones I've been covering lately are LinkedIn, and we're having a .com resurrection going on right now. And so they issue the right to buy the stock at zero and then to sell it at whatever the market price is once those options can be exercised. So there's an incentive for the insiders in the company to run the price of the stock up, and that's even using the earnings of the company itself, run the price of the stock up, unload the free shares that they have, and then cash out and then let the price of the stock collapse. That's what we see in the stock market continually. We saw it in the .com bust, and apparently people didn't learn their lesson. And again, it's not people. I covered this in my original Office series, the 401k, where the protagonist is asking her, what are you invested in? Well, I'm invested in mutual funds. Okay, what are they invested in? Well, they're invested in stocks. Okay, what stocks? I don't know. And so it's removed about 4 to 5 places from the original investor, and that creates this illicit opportunity for the insiders of the company to enrich themselves at the expense of the shareholders who have no clue about what's going on. The same thing operates in government. They run in, enrich themselves, run out, and try to leave the next guy holding the bag. So we've got this situation of all these balls up in the air, and the next guy's trying to catch as many balls as he can and throw them back up and throw it to the next guy and have it crash on his watch. So that's the way it's been running for the last couple of decades, and eventually it's going to crash.
Yeah, I think a few weeks ago you did a video, and the gentleman's name escapes me. I think he was the CEO or founder of some social networking game thing, and there was a video, and I don't think he realized what he was saying at the time, but he pretty much gave a clinic on how to create a company on hype and then cash out. And if that's not an example of a transfer of wealth, then I sure as heck don't know what is. But all right. So one of my concerns about our government, and there are many, but this one is that we'll eventually be forced to be in a cashless society. I've seen J.P. Morgan Chase do a commercial with Drew Brees, and he breaks a window, and there's just a transfer of funds on his cell phone. And I look at last year, this year, and the next couple of years as the soft sell, and then eventually we're going to get a hard sell. Now, the funny thing is, a lot of my friends who are skeptical of the government, they don't even think that this is an issue. So maybe I'm crazy. Is this something that you're concerned of, and what the implications could be when we move to a cashless society?
Well, it seems to be something that's in their plans. I don't know if they have the ability to institute their plans. We seem to have, as others that you've covered on your channel, moves in Utah and other states to move away from centralization. So I'm a proponent that we'll actually really see a move towards decentralization. I don't think these people really have as much control or knowledge as people would assume they do. As I pointed out last night, in my interview, these are people I went to high school with. Okay, these aren't the smartest people in the world. These are the people who joined the fraternities and then joined the named universities, had a bunch of money in their family, and they're not the smartest people around. So they don't know the future. Only God knows the future. And if that's in the cards, it's in the cards. But I'm not convinced at all that that is in the cards this time around. And as I pointed out in the past many times in history, although the technology exists now, but many other times in history, including under Hitler, the Jews all received Star of David, right?
Right.
And so there have been other attempts in history that have failed. I'm not at all convinced that this attempt will succeed.
Gotcha. Okay, now I'm a big proponent of civil disobedience, and when I say civil disobedience, I really mean in a nonviolent way. And that is one way to impact the government and the system in general. I've often said that Martin Luther King has accomplished more in a few years than the Tea Party ever will. One of those things in regards to civil disobedience is buying silver. Can you explain why that is?
Sure. Well, the analogy you use is great. Martin Luther King was not – most people think that Martin Luther King was a leader of people voting with their feet. And there was a nonviolent revolution, and there's Gandhi and others, but and people marched and a lot of other things. But people also used their dollars. And there were a lot of people who refused to be customers of establishments that discriminated against them or against blacks. There were a lot of people who refused to go along with that with their dollars. Silver is more of a pure play in that, in the sense that there's no marching in the streets, but there's just people voting with their dollars. Your dollar is your most important vote. Now, there's a lot of things that I cover on the blog. I don't have time to cover on my Silver channel. There's a lot of things you can do with your dollars. You can refuse to support the big pharma, big medical. You can support local and organic businesses. You can really do a lot of things with your dollars. In my opinion, that's the most important vote that you have. And by taking your paper dollars and converting those dollars into physical silver, you are voting with your dollars, and you have an impact in a real way. I did a video a number of months ago about Ron Paul, and I never jumped on the Ron Paul bandwagon. There's a lot of reasons. I'm certainly not going to go down the rabbit hole into Masonry and all the rest. But I never jumped on the Ron Paul bandwagon, and the analysis that I did was roughly the amount of money that was spent trying to promote Ron Paul and the amount of money that was donated for the Ron Paul campaign. And if you add that all up, if those people would have taken that money and invested it in physical silver, they'd still have that money, and it probably would have made a much bigger difference.
Yeah. At the very least, they would have had somewhere around 25% of an increase in profit. All right. Well, you may have just a little bit taken the wind out of my next question. I really don't want to talk about politics here, but since we're getting close to the election, you have talked about why it is better to just walk away from the system and not vote. Because of my background, I have run into people in the past and present who constantly say, one candidate is our only choice. We only have two options. And, I don't even want to get into the lesser of two evils, because that means that you would still be voting. Can you explain to anybody, whether it is a secular person or a person of faith, why it is important to actually not vote and why it is a better choice?
Well, you have to question whether or not you really believe that the voting system, first of all, is honest. And, we've seen, I don't even want to go into the machinations of the caucus system and the other systems. I think most of the hardcore Ron Paul supporters are already aware of the evil machinations that went on in the Republican Party. I've never agreed that Ron Paul should have stayed within the Republican Party. I think he should have left the Republican Party and simply cited the fact that the vast majority of Republicans don't agree with his views. Ron Paul advocates closing overseas bases. He advocates bringing the troops home. He advocates not trying to support some vast petrodollar system that can support some war machine. And he's for cutting the budget. Now, if we look at the debate now, it's between the big conservative spenders, and I just heard an ad today for Romney, and it's Romney, if you don't elect Romney, they're going to cut the spending on military. And if you don't elect Obama, they're going to cut the spending on this. So if you don't elect this guy, they're going to cut spending. So Ron Paul said, I'm going to cut $1 trillion, and you're not going to do that if you're a Republican. So that's the big point. Now, of course, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole. At some point, I'm going to cover vote fraud, vote scam, and that's actually an old story historically. If you study history, right. Kennedy, Nixon, I could go on and on and on and on and on. I personally have never voted, and that began with me starting out as an atheist and a Marxist who believed the system was controlled by corrupt corporate entities, flipping all the way to the other side, becoming a fundamentalist Christian, and again believing everything's controlled by corrupt corporate entities. So right. I kind of made the far flip from one side to the other, neither side believing in this voting system.
Gotcha. Okay, now I just want to swing back real quick. There's been a lot of rumors about eventually 401ks being seized by the government. These have been going around for a few years. In your personal opinion, what are the odds that you think this will eventually happen? I personally think if we do have an economic collapse and there is this Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome reality, then it would happen. But I'm starting to believe that this will be a controlled situation because it doesn't matter what the elected officials believe. In the end, they don't want cities burning to the ground, which at the very least I hope they don't. So it'll be controlled, whether it's a revaluation of the dollars, almost similar to what's going on with Iran and how Iran lost 40% of its value in a week. So what are your opinions regarding the 401ks reconstituted by the federal government and to bail out the Social Security Fund?
Well, the move has already started. If you follow the recent news about the tightening on the money markets, you can see that they're beginning to start to clamp down on the ability to withdraw your money. They're kind of slowly introducing these types of regulations. Now, my 401k, I've only ever kept it in money market funds, and that's because I don't play stocks with my retirement. I try to keep it in cash, but they've definitely given indications that they're looking at stopping the withdrawals from that very, very liquid cash trading element. Now, on to the next thing, the seizure of the 401ks. That's always, and in the silver community, we have a large contingent that are of that Mad Max type of view. Now, I've never been in that camp, although I definitely promote being prepared for whatever. Of course, even FEMA tells you to be prepared and tells you what to do. So that's definitely a wise thing to be prepared. But as far as silver, the most bullish scenario for silver is growth. The uses of silver and the growth of Asia, and you have to remember that these people overseas in Asia, I don't know if you follow YouTube, but I follow YouTube pretty closely because I have a channel and I check popularity and watch other channels and see things come up. Well, you can look over and look up, say, K-pop, Korean pop, or Asian pop, and you see a type of cultural influence beginning over in Asia, and they're kind of becoming to be influenced by America culturally. We saw the same sort of thing with the UK in the 60s. Any of you that are of my generation that were big rock and roll fans, you know that all of the bands from 65 through the late 70s, they all were the UK invasion band. We're seeing the same thing happen in Asia. And if we think about the collapse, not the collapse, but the decline of the UK, the 30-year bond, I think Jimmy Rogers has talked about the bear market in the UK 30-year. Well, if you look at the UK, at least up till today, yes, they suffered a decline in international power. So did Spain, so did Portugal, so did every other empire that's ever existed. But it's not like the UK is back at dirt floors right now. So I don't really agree that the United States is going back to some type of Stone Age, because they're not going to be the most dominant power in the world. There are a lot of other influences on the world, and we can see that Asia is very, very strongly influenced culturally by the West. So I see more of a transition to Asia and just kind of a slow decline of America, and just sort of an acceptance that that's the reality, something similar to what we've seen in the UK over the last 70 years.
Gotcha. Well, Brother John, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. I've mentioned your website a few times already, but why don't you go ahead and mention your websites?
Absolutely. People can come to brotherjohnf.com, or just go to Brother John F on YouTube, and or if you can't find those or don't know how to look them up, just type in Brother John F on Google, and you'll find those as the top two.
All right. Well, we hope to have you on later in the future.
Thanks again, Jim. It was great being with you.